Hello and welcome to the Sports Report. I'm Nathaniel Wilson, in for Mitch Wertlieb, your host for this program that's all about the world of sports in Vermont and beyond. Today on our show, Vermont Green FC sporting director Adam Pfeifer joins us in studio to break down the club's upset win last week in the U.S. Open Cup. And then author and cross-country ski fan Bill McKibben and Josh Crane, editor of Vermont Public's podcast Brave Little State, give first-hand accounts of this past weekend's cross-country World Cup finals in Lake Placid, New York. If you're with us on YouTube, hit that like button and hit that subscribe button and let me know in the comments who busted your bracket. I've got my men's and women's brackets here. Both of them, oh, so busted. I think I've got some kind of beef with the state of Wisconsin because it was the Wisconsin men and the Green Bay women I both had win in first round games and they lost. But I'd love to know in the chat who busted your bracket. If you're listening via radio or podcast, we encourage you to come hang out each Monday at 2 p.m. on the Sports Report YouTube channel. And if you want to hear more about what's happening in Vermont sports, you're in the right place. It's time for the High Five. It's the segment where we count down 5 of the biggest stories in Vermont sports from the last week. At number 5, two-time Olympic silver medalist Ben Ogden capped off a dream season close to home as the FIS Cross Country World Cup final was held in Lake Placid over the weekend. His best race of the weekend came in the men's 10-kilometer, where he finished 11th. Ogden took 17th overall this World Cup season. At number 4, the Middlebury College women's swimming and diving team finished in 20th place at the D3 NCAA Swimming and Diving Championships last week. Sophomore Anna McGrew led the way with a great showing, breaking her own school record and winning the consolation final in the 100-yard freestyle. She became the first woman in school history to eclipse 50 seconds in the event, finishing with a time of 49.84 seconds. And at number 3, the University of Vermont women's basketball team fell short against Louisville 52-72 in the first round of the NCAA D1 women's basketball tournament. The Catamounts led by 1 after a quarter, but a strong third from the Cardinals proved to be too much. Vermont's Kira Hansen scored 22, while Nicola Prieti added 16 in her final game for the University of Vermont. At number 2, Olympic champion Jessie Diggins retired after winning yet another Crystal Globe at the Stifel Lake Placid Cup over the weekend. The 4-time Olympic medalist secured her 4th overall World Cup title and got to do it on home soil. Congratulations to Jessie, the most accomplished American cross-country skier, on a fantastic career and retirement. And at number 1, Vermont Green FC beat Portland Hearts of Pine 1-0 in the first round of the U.S. Open Cup. Vermont forward and returning invincible David Ismail found himself in front of a wide-open net, scoring the game's only goal in the 40th minute. The Green will host professional club Westchester SC in the U.S. Open Cup second round on April 1st. And you can stay with us as we break down the Green's win with club sporting director Adam Pfeifer right after this break. Welcome back to the Sports Report. I'm Nathaniel Wilson, in for Mitch Wertlieb, and I'm joined here today by Adam Pfeifer, the sporting director of Vermont Green FC. Adam, how are you doing?
Well.
Thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah,
Last week was a pretty big week in Vermont Green FC history. Got their second win in the U.S. Open Cup. The first time that the team made it was in 2024. You guys also got a first-round win there. Last week was against the Portland Hearts of Pine 1-0. What was the feeling from you when that final whistle rang?
Obviously, it was a great feeling. I think for us, there was a little bit more on the line. Mm-hmm. Just the fact that we were playing against Portland, kind of a local regional rival now, and even though we haven't played against them, we're not in a league with them. There's still a little bit of a rivalry mm-hmm. online, between the fans and obviously the owners of the clubs, and so for us it was nice to be able to get out there and get a goal and not concede and find a way to get a result and move on. Yeah.
What did you see in the game that you thought led to the win? I was there at the game last week. I thought I saw Portland doing a lot of long balls. They were doing kind of a high press too, and it seemed like the long ball wasn't really working because the Green defenders were kind of swallowing them up really well.
Yeah, tactically, I think that our coaching staff did a really good job of one, preparing for what Portland was going to want to do. They are a team that plays a really high pressure brand of ball, and just they play very fast, and so they want the game to be somewhat chaotic, and for us we made things very difficult in the middle of the field for them. Won a lot of battles in that part, but I think just defensively, like structurally, we were really sound, and all that credit goes to obviously the players and mm-hmm. and Chris Taylor and his staff that just did a phenomenal job of preparing our team in an incredibly short amount of time. So. But I think there's also, we have some pretty good players too, mm-hmm. and guys that are going to play at a really high level that just happen to be in college right now.
For our listeners who may not understand, I'm wondering if you could just explain a little bit of what is the level of play like in the USL2, or what stage of the careers are these players in, especially compared to USL1, which is where the Portland Hearts of Pine play?
Yeah, so obviously, there's USL1 players are paid professionals. Mm-hmm. That's their full-time job is to play. But I think in college, at the Division I level, you have guys that, some guys that will maybe leave after their first year of college or after their second year of college and go straight to the MLS, which is obviously, two sort of levels up from where the USL 1 is. So, there's a mix of different levels of player. Mm-hmm. And certainly, at USL 2, it's very similar. For us, we try to bring in the best of the best, college players around mm-hmm. the country. And so I think, you would expect guys that are coming to play for the Vermont Green in the summer to be players that some will move on to sign MLS first team mm-hmm. contracts. We've got a couple players playing in Europe right now that have been with us in the past, and then there are a lot of guys that will go on and play in the USL Championship or at the USL 1 level as well. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag, but it's a high level.
Mm-hmm. You had mentioned in your first answer, you talked about the limited window of preparation, and I think that was a lot of the story before this game. It was 3 practices that the guys got together before?
It wasn't really even 3. We had 6 guys for that first session because we had flights canceled. So on the Friday before our Saturday training sessions, we had a bunch of guys whose flights were canceled, and so they had to either fly on Saturday evening or on Sunday morning. So we really didn't have the full team for training until the Monday night before the Tuesday game. So it was really only one practice where we had everybody together. But we used all the tools that we have at our disposal in mm-hmm. terms of we met as a team over Google Meet, and mm-hmm. we met. With the guys spent a lot of time in the video room. And again, like, our staff just did a phenomenal job. Chris and guys like Alex Elias, spent a ton of time, preparing for those meetings and making the most out of the time that we had with the players, and you don't want to overdo it in those mm-hmm. situations. You could certainly give them too much information. I think they hit like the perfect balance and did a phenomenal job, and now we got to do it again this weekend.
I saw a clip that the club uploaded on Instagram that was, I think it was Chris talking during one of those training sessions, and he had mentioned that the guys who were here last year already knew about the crowd, but for the new guys, that the crowd could give that kind of extra 10% that you might need in the heat of battle. I'm wondering, are there any key takeaways that you kind of try to impart on new players to get them up to speed with just how things work in the green?
Yeah, I think a lot of the guys come from really big college programs. So playing in front of, a vibrant, audience and a crowd that is full and has several thousand people, that's not necessarily new for all these guys. I do think that our crowd is a little bit different, probably a little bit more engaged than maybe what you get in a college soccer environment. And so I think that again, there's a delicate balance to that. You don't want the crowd influencing your decision making as a player. I think that can lead to some negative results. But I do think that having the crowd sort of give you that, as Chris said, that extra 10% to make that extra run or to find a way to get through a difficult moment in a match, and also trusting that the crowd is going to influence the game, and that's become a really big thing for us and a major advantage.
And if you're just joining us, I'm speaking with Adam Pfeifer, the sporting director for the Vermont Green FC. Adam, as you've been preparing for this upcoming game, the round 2 game against Westchester SC. Yeah. What's that preparation like for you?
We're trying to figure out who we can get here in time for that game. Same thing as the first round. We have players that are on current active college rosters, and they're all in their spring seasons, and they all have different schedules. We won't be contending with as much sort of spring break time as we did with the first round, but we're still trying to figure out who's going to be available for us to bring back, and which of our other players that are going to be coming to play for us this summer that maybe weren't available for the first round might be available for the second round. And you're talking about players from out in California to, down in Texas to, places in the middle of the country to obviously the East Coast. So they're all over the country, and, we're trying to figure out how we can bring them in to get as many practices with the full group as we possibly can. But at the end of the day, we're going to find a way to make it work. And if it's only one practice again, that will be the situation, and we'll do the best that we can to prepare for that match and go into it confident that we can go out and get a result.
And seeing Westchester SC as the opponent in the second round, it's another USL 1 team. I know during the 2024 Open Cup run, it was the first round against a USL 1 team and then facing an MLS Pro team in the second round. I'm wondering how that affects your thinking at all. Does it give you better odds that the Green come out and get an upset again, that they're facing a team that's just slightly above instead of many leagues above?
Yeah. I guess it crosses your mind. We try not to think about it too much. At the end of the day, we have to go into this match with the mentality that we're the underdogs. Certainly we have belief in our players that we can go out and find a way to win. But there's a lot on the line in this game, even more so than just, an amateur team playing against a professional team. We have an opportunity where if we win this game, we are going to be playing against an MLS team in a competitive match in the next round. And so there's a little bit of added pressure, I think, on this round. The players are obviously aware of it. Our staff is obviously aware of that. And, I think for all of us, that's what we dream of doing. You dream of playing against and with professional teams. But it's a whole other kind of step up if you can, put yourself in a position to play against sort of a first division professional team. And so there is some pressure on us where we went into that last round with we have nothing to lose. We have no pressure on us. Now it's all right, one win away at home, to have an opportunity to go up against, a first division professional team. That's a little bit of, added incentive on the line. So there will be some pressure on our players that I think will be a little bit different than that first round. And our guys have to find a way to get through that and find a result.
Last one here for you, Adam. You had mentioned being at home, and you guys have this second round game at home, and the first round was at home. I'm wondering, what was it like to have the fans back, and how much of a boost do you hope that can bring to the next U.S. Open Cup game on the first?
Yeah, I don't think that you can really, measure how important that is. I mean, that's a really big big thing for us. It's not as sort of much of an advantage maybe as it would be in the summer because we are flying guys in from all over the country. So our travel is probably very similar, but might even be more than what Westchester is going to be dealing with because we're going to be having guys coming from all over the country. But I think for us, anytime that we get a chance to play here in Vermont at Virtue Field in front of our fans, it's a special event, and we've been able to kind of extend this thing now where, our season is normally like 2 months long. Last year it was like 3 months long because of the playoff run we went on. Now we have the potential to make this thing like a 5-month, 6-month kind of experience where we get to be around our guys a little bit more, and we get to be engaged with with the fan base and with our supporters even more. So again, another, little bit of more incentive to find a way to go out, get a result so that we can get back together again in 2 weeks. And you never know, maybe we're in front of the fans again. So yeah, there's a lot riding on this one.
That's Adam Pfeifer, sporting director of Vermont Green FC. Adam, thank you so much for joining us on the Sports Report today.
Man, thanks so much for having me.
And the Green play the Westchester Soccer Club on April 1st here at Virtue Field in Burlington, Vermont. The ticket lottery opened today, so enter if you want to get those tickets and see that game. And we'll be right back on the Sports Report with Bill McKibben and Josh Crane. Welcome back to the Sports Report. I've got Josh Crane on set with us. He is the producer of Vermont Public's Brave Little State podcast, and we are joined also by author and environmentalist Bill McKibben. Josh, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to talk cross-country skiing.
Bill, how you doing? Thanks so much for joining us.
Hey, it's a real pleasure, man. Good to be with you both.
So over the weekend, Josh and his father-in-law, Bill McKibben, were on hand at they were in Lake Placid with their family for the Cross Country World Cup Finals. This was a much anticipated event. Bill, I'm hoping to start with you because Josh let me know before we got started that this event and the plans for it were around 2 years in the making. Is that right?
That's right. It's a couple of years ago when word began to circulate that perhaps the Nordic World Cup would be coming back to the U.S. It comes here very, very rarely. This is a European-dominated sport. But 2 years ago, they were in Minnesota, Jesse Diggins' home turf. And the outpouring of spectators and the outpouring of affection for cross-country ski racing was so great that they were able to persuade them to come back, I think in part because everybody was anticipating that this would be Diggins' retirement weekend, that following the Olympics, she'd probably be ready to hang up her skis. And so this event took on special resonance. She's the greatest cross-country skier that North America's ever produced.
And Josh, I'm wondering if you can just give us a little info on what was the atmosphere.
It was, I haven't been to many of these cross-country ski races, and this was particularly special, as Bill was saying. It doesn't come to this region very often. It was in Lake Placid something like 45 years ago. That was the last time. And so really a once-in-a-career, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. And there were 12,000 plus fans there, cutting across every possible demographic. There were, college kids out drinking on the course. There were kids sliding in makeshift ice slides. Food vendors. It almost felt like I was at sort of a music festival or something like that. It just like a really, really fun thing to be a part of for people who are diehard cross-country ski fans, and also for someone like me who's come to the sport over the last 10 years and really come to appreciate it.
And Bill, you had mentioned that you thought a lot of people would be on hand in anticipation of Jesse Diggins' retirement, which did happen this weekend. I feel like this was also just such a special time because of the results that we got to see, especially on the men's side in cross country in the Olympics in February of this year. And so I'm just wondering, what was it like for this to all just kind of coalesce in this moment in this weekend?
So it's a very good question. It was a perfect kind of moment to look back in a lot of ways, back on Jesse Diggins' career, back on the Olympics, where two American men, Gus Schumacher from Alaska and our own Ben Ogden, became the first two men since Bill Koch to win Olympic medals in cross-country skiing. Now, and the sort of sense of Vermont as a pervasive part of these proceedings was very strong. Two recent deaths were really hanging over the affair. The first was Ben's father, John Ogden, who died 2 years ago, and who was the kind of animating spirit in a lot of ways of Nordic skiing in the Green Mountain State, always on hand to help with youth skiing and so on and so forth. He would have been absolutely in his element at this. He would have been the mayor of this event. And I think there's no question that there were lots and lots of people thinking of him. The other death, much more recent, that was kind of in the air was Vermont's John Caldwell, who died at 97 about a month ago. John Caldwell was the father of, he wrote the book on cross-country skiing in America. In fact, it was called The Cross-Country Skiing Book. And when it came out in 1964, it sold 500,000 copies and ignited the boom in Nordic skiing that really laid the foundation for American, the whole enterprise of cross-country skiing in this country. To him, we owe, in many ways, the network of cross-country resorts around the state of Vermont and the country, and quite directly to his genes, we owe a considerable number of people who've made it to the Olympics. Tim Caldwell, Patty Caldwell, Sophie Caldwell. There were a lot of Caldwells on hand for handing out medals and things at these proceedings. So Vermont was very much in evidence. In fact, Josh got the best, I think, tape of the best interview of the entire weekend when Ben Ogden finished his race. Josh asked him, how would anyone know you were a Vermonter? And Josh, what was it that Ben said in response?
He thought about it for literally less than a second and said, basically, for all of my training fuel and practice fuel, I just drink maple syrup.
I get all my carbs from maple syrup. Right. And then he pointed to the Untapped logo on his hat. That maple syrup from the Cochrane farm up there. It's very much what's been fueling him, I think, as he was out there winning Olympic glory this year.
Bill, I've been reading your book Long Distance in anticipation of having you on the show, and I feel like I picked such a perfect time to read it because so much that's in there. Obviously, so this book, Bill, is your story of spending a year doing high-level, intense training to become a cross-country athlete. You took a year of your life and trained, and this book came out in 2000, and you get into so much of the atmosphere of the United States versus Europe when it comes to fans of Nordic skiing and when it comes to people at the events. And it feels almost like in 2026, this event that you went to is kind of the reverse of the way that you were explaining these kind of empty events in the United States in the late 90s versus packed stands in Europe. And I wonder, what was that like seeing 12,000 people on hand for these events?
So not at all surprised, given what happened in Minneapolis a couple of years ago, but also given what's happened with American cross-country skiing. For a very long time after Bill Koch retired in the 1980s, American cross-country skiing was not competitive at a global level. We didn't win anything. And that began to change right around the time that book came out 25 years ago. And since then, America has developed a truly remarkable ski program, probably the best in the world that doesn't come from Scandinavia. And it's been not just successful, it's been populated by remarkable characters. Keegan Randall, who with Jesse won the first American gold at Pyeongchang in 2018, Ben Ogden, Simi Hamilton, many, many more skiers from this part of the world, or who went to school at Middlebury or Dartmouth or UVM. And a great coach like Matt Whitcomb, a Middlebury product who now has a cabin up in Burke, on and on and on. This story really kind of culminates with Jesse's rise as one of the great skiers in the world, and I think quite arguably the best winter endurance athlete that America's ever produced. She's not only extremely successful, she's extremely charismatic. Her openness, her willingness to talk about her eating disorders and how she overcame them, beautifully told in the new documentary you can watch on Peacock called Threshold. Her strong engagement with the climate fight. She's a stalwart part of Protect Our Winters. All these things combine to make her a hero in a way that we haven't really had since Bill Koch. And you could tell that because Jesse's signature fashion move has been sticking glitter on her cheeks before she races. I would say there were roughly 4,000 little girls at this Lake Placid event with glitter on their cheeks. And after the last race, 600 or 700 of them were skiing around the stadium.
Wow.
Together. And then they formed a kind of phalanx where Jesse skied between them all as they rattled their poles and things and bade her farewell from the sport. It was a very moving moment. And hopefully there's some in that number who will be the next Jesse Diggins, the next Keegan Randall, ready to go.
And if you're just joining us, that's Bill McKibben, author and environmentalist, and I'm also here with Josh Crane, producer of Vermont Public's Brave Little State. I'd love to continue talking about Jessie Diggins. Her career wrapped up this weekend. I think we have some footage that we can roll courtesy of U.S. Ski and Snowboard of Jessie receiving her 4th Crystal Globe.
In first place, and Crystal Globe winner, representing the United States of America, Jessie Diggins.
And this is just such a fantastic moment. What was it like being there on hand, Josh?
It was amazing because that was on Sunday. It was pouring rain all day long, and there were thousands and thousands. I want to say most people stuck around to watch Jessie receive her globe and all the awards handed out. And it was really just a remarkable moment, and not just the end of her career, but also what an accomplishment, her 4th Crystal Globe. I believe she's the only non-European to ever win that award, and she's done it 4 times. She's, as Bill was saying, charismatic and really deserving of being celebrated in that way. And there was a lot of champagne on stage, and so I would say celebrations were not hard to come by. There were air horns, people chanting loudly. It was really cool. And Bill was talking about.
I'll note that Josh's son Asa, who turned 2 on Sunday, was there chanting Jessie Diggins in the background. So it went all the way down the age spectrum, this celebration.
It's true. He was there full-throated support as well.
Did he have some glitter?
He did. He did have some glitter. He looked good, and there was a lot of glitter to go around. There was a whole station where they were getting, glittering people's faces. So, yeah.
I want to turn the conversation quickly to Ben Ogden, who also, this was the end of the season. He capped off just what was such a remarkable year. And I'm wondering, you had mentioned to me that there were Ben Ogden mustaches also going on along with the glitter.
I mean, it just shows how big of a season it's been for him. I think he sort of started the season as a little bit of an up-and-comer, like, on the radar. And then, of course, he really arrived. I think, multiple Olympic medals, breaking a really long drought for American men at the Olympics in this sport. And of course, this almost once in a career opportunity to have basically a home race, where tons of friends and family could be there. And just one quick story to illustrate that is there were these people wearing like ski team bibs, fans with like the faces of different skiers on them, and there were these two women wearing Ben Ogden bibs. And so I went up and introduced myself, and it was one of his sisters.
Oh, wow.
And so, there were a lot of Ogden support around, and he has become like a hometown hero for sure. And he has an iconic mustache, I would say, and there were a lot of little kids donning Ben Ogden mustaches wandering around.
Bill, did you have any?
He's a true Vermonter. Now, when he won his silver medal at the Olympics, reporter asked him, like, do you think you'll get endorsements now? What do you get out of this? And he said, what I'm really hoping, I've always wanted to talk to Bernie, and I've never wanted to bother him, but he's my hero. And maybe now that I have a silver medal, I'll get a chance to talk to Bernie. I was up on the race course at the high point, the top of the very highest climb for the last race where Jesse was racing. Ben had finished his race, so he was up there with a whole passel of Vermonters at the highest, most difficult point in the race. And he had a chainsaw in his hand that he was revving over and over again just to add to the noise and chaos as they came around the final corner. So it was a great Green Mountain scene, I got to say.
And Josh, we had talked about this before. I want to get into kind of the results from the weekend, because I think so much of the focus was on Jesse and this retirement and this season that was coming to an end. There were no podium finishes for the U.S., but you think that is you have more of a positive spin on that, I would say.
I mean, look, I would be lying if I said I wasn't hoping to see, a classic storybook ending with Jesse winning her final race, or, Ben getting on the podium. It was not to be. And I think even just the fact that I and others probably felt a little bit of disappointment about that just shows how far this program has come over the years. The fact that that's even realistic. I think, Bill was talking about where things were a couple decades ago. Having any American skiers just qualifying for these races would have been a huge accomplishment. And now that's the expectation. And so it was just really cool to be a part of it. And obviously I haven't been around since the 80s, but I've been around long enough to know that this is a really special time for cross-country skiing in this country. And while there were I think the highest American finish this weekend was Jessie on Friday, got fifth. But of course, she secured her overall Crystal Globe for the season, and just what a season overall for the U.S. team.
Well, and American fans got to watch up close the greatest cross-country skier who's ever lived, Johannes Klæbo, the Norwegian superstar who has rewritten the book on cross-country skiing. And he was at absolute peak form. He raced Friday and Sunday and won both races with a kind of air of commanding authority that, was Michael Jordan-esque in its, in its nonchalance. A beautiful, beautiful performance. American ski fans, all the Europeans I talked to all the skiers were commenting on the fact that American ski fans are probably the most knowledgeable in the world. They were rooting hard for everyone. One great moment came on Saturday in the sprint race. Klæbo sat it out because he had a concussion from a few weeks ago after a collision with Ben Ogden. So he's been taking it a little bit easy. And that meant that the sprint on the final went to Italian, Federico Pellegrino. in his last race. He was retiring this weekend too. Pellegrino's nickname for Italian fans, Chico Pelle. It turns out that every ski fan in the U.S. knew it, and they were screaming his name as he was making his way around the course, even in his warm-up lap. I watched him coming up a hill, and at one point he just sort of stopped to soak it all in, and he said later, "Just hearing them chant my name gave me great power," he said. And he returned the favor by when he finished and won the race, donning a cowboy hat on the podium. I think that's sort of the Italian understanding of what constitutes American. So he was doing his best to pay back the favor. It was a great moment.
Yeah, it reminds me of the Italian-American baseball players at the World Baseball Classic who were drinking the espresso after home runs.
Fair enough. Absolutely.
I'm wondering, Bill, if you have any thoughts about just seeing that support or seeing the fantastic year that Nordic skiers, American Nordic skiers, had this year. If you have any thoughts about what that means for the future of Nordic skiing in the United States and in our region specifically.
Well, here, maybe we've got to be a little more sober. I don't have any doubt that there are an extraordinary number of great athletes coming up who want to do this sport because it's such a beautiful, beautiful sport. In many ways, the hardest, most physically demanding sport on earth, but also one of the most graceful and beautiful. The challenge isn't that. The challenge is that it requires winter to make it work. And that's getting harder and harder to come by. We had a beautiful throwback winter in Vermont this year. I hope everybody enjoyed every second of it and took advantage of every snowstorm. We're still skiing up at Breadloaf in Ripton. So, if you get out this week, maybe you'll get a few more days. But that's not what we can count on anymore. The greatest challenge for Nordic skiing by far is the depressing erosion of winter as the climate warms. That's why it's so valiant of Ben Ogden to be wanting to sit down with Bernie Sanders, who's been as big a climate champion as we've ever had. Maybe together, all of us will figure out some ways to preserve winter for the future so that there can be a new generation of, the baton got passed from Bill Koch to Ben Ogden but it'd be nice to be able to pass it down for another generation too. We can't count on that, but we can work toward it.
That's author and environmentalist Bill McKibben. Thank you so much for joining us on the Sports Report. Josh, I think you're going to stay with us for one more segment. Want to hang out for a little bit?
Absolutely.
All right. We are going to be right back here on the Sports Report. Do not go anywhere if you want to hear us talk about the Boston Celtics. Welcome back to the Sports Report. I'm here on set with Vermont Public's Josh Crane, producer of Brave Little State. Josh, thanks for staying and hanging out.
Very happy to.
The cookie at the end of this stick of doing the show is talking about your beloved Boston Celtics. It's I'm sure a shame to you and many of our listeners that Mitch is not here for this discussion.
Well, I got to talk to a Miami Heat fan.
Yeah, exactly.
No, this is good. This is good. I'm forcing you to talk about the Boston Celtics.
Exactly. So. I do have here, Brian, I don't know if we can get a tight shot of it. I replaced Mitch's Boston Red Sox figure with my own Alonzo Mourning Miami Heat figure.
I just want Mitch to know that I had no part in this.
So last night, the Celtics played the Timberwolves. They lost that one. Tatum's been back a few weeks now.
Yeah.
What are the early returns in your mind?
I mean, I think as far as Tatum goes, he looks incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, expectations were all over the place. Like, I mean, if you had told me he would have missed the whole season recovering from his Achilles injury, that would have seemed totally reasonable. The fact that he came back within, I think, something like 10 months.
Yeah.
And also looks, he's not 100% of what he, like full Tatum, but I would say he's like much closer. I don't want to, like maybe 90% from what we're used to. And he's not shooting the ball great, but he's scoring. He's, finding other ways to make an impact. And it's just good to see him out there. I've been a little taken aback by some of the expectations that people are now putting on this team.
Yeah.
But it's just from a fan perspective. I mean, he's an incredible player, and it's just great to have him back.
Yeah, just have his stats pulled up here. He's played 8 games. He's averaging 19 points a game and 8.9 rebounds, 3.3 assists. That would be a season high in rebounds for him if he finishes with that, which I think is, or a career high in rebounds in one season and average. And I think it kind of speaks a lot to him as a player. And I think I've seen a lot of the discussion online about, like, he's just a winner. That's something Mitch and I have been talking about. He's willing to do so much of the dirty work. And I think that is not really what the conversation they were interested in having about him before he made his comeback.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that stat you just quoted, that's not an accident, right? Like, Tatum was watching how much success this team had without him all season. The Celtics, people were predicting them to miss the playoffs this season, thinking about it as sort of a gap year. And in Tatum's absence, all they've done is win. They were in second place in the East for most of the season before Tatum came back. And I think Tatum, to his credit, he's the superstar player who's trying to fit into this team in many ways. And I think he's sort of striking that balance pretty well right now.
You had mentioned being kind of weary, hesitant about the expectations that I think are being put on this team and have been for a lot of this season. Recently, Detroit Pistons, who they are the number 1 seed in the conference, their best player, Cade Cunningham, had a collapsed lung that he got injured in a game last week. And I think in a lot of ways, it kind of can clear the way for the Celtics to continue moving forward. You said yourself, they're the 2 seed in this conference. They are only a few games back of Detroit, who at the All-Star break was the best record in the NBA.
I mean, some of this might be me wanting to just set lower expectations as a fan, but I think there's been these wild swings from before the season. Like I was saying, people thought this team wasn't going to be very good at all, and now people are saying they're the favorites to come out of the East.
Yeah.
And to me, I'm like, Tatum, as good as he looks, he's still recovering from a major injury. And as good as the rest of the team has been with Jaylen Brown and a bunch of young guys, basically, those young guys have looked great in the regular season, but their rookie, Hugo Gonzalez, and, young players like Jordan Walsh don't have a ton of playoff experience or any playoff experience. And so I think, to me, they should not be the overwhelming favorites to come out of this conference. And I think maybe that some of those expectations just speak more to the state of the East in general, which is sort of wide open in a lot of people's minds.
I think in my brain also, I've been someone who for a long time has been quick to praise Joe Mazzulla. I think he's just like an insane person. He is built to win. He seems like he doesn't care about anything other than winning basketball games and watching the town every single day.
Yes.
You had mentioned kind of some of those young players, and I'm wondering what's it been like to watch these guys? Like I don't know. I feel like there are guys on the Celtics who, in my mind, I'm like, maybe at the beginning of the year, I don't think of you as an NBA player, really, right? Like your Baylor Shiremans, your Jordan Walshes, and these guys are not only playing, but they're contributing to winning. They're scoring. Jordan Walsh is hitting his threes. What has that been like to watch?
It's been surprising, honestly. I mean, I don't think there's any honest Celtics fan who can say that this is what they were expecting out of this season. Nimi Keita is another guy who, coming into the season, people were saying that the Celtics needed a starting center because there was no one on the roster who could fill that role. And Keita has stepped up and become a huge part of this team, and I think will be hopefully for a long time. It's just been surprising. And I think playoff is where reputations really get made or solidified. And so I'm hopeful that some of this will translate.
Yeah. And I'm sure that Jaylen Brown is feeling similar as he's going into these playoffs. He's just been like a scoring machine this season. And I think I've seen a lot of people kind of give the take that this season he got to kind of show what he would be on his own team. But I think, to me, the coolest thing to watch is like the relationship between him and Tatum. And I think for so long they were kind of pit against each other. And when they went to the finals and lost to the Warriors in 2024, people were like, it'll never work. And
In 22.
In 22, yeah. And it's been interesting because I think I was kind of the impression when they won the championship, that was 24, yes. When they won the championship, I was like, oh, well, all that talk is just going to go away, right? We can stop talking about how these guys won't win together after they won. And they still, I think, have to outwardly show that they are connected because of how much there's kind of this force that exists that is driving a wedge between them.
Yeah. I mean, I think, to be honest, it's just sort of an easy narrative for media to spin. I think those guys have always had a strong relationship. I don't think they've ever been best friends, and that's okay. They're teammates, they're colleagues, they're, they play great basketball on the court together. So I think to some extent the narrative that Jaylen really wanted to like prove everyone wrong this season is a little overblown. On the other hand, I think he's taken full advantage of the extra opportunity he's had, and he's probably going to make first team All NBA, or if not that, second team, and as one of the 10 best players in the league. Long term, looking ahead to the playoffs and next season, I mean, that probably only bodes well for this team's chances.
I wonder if we can switch gears a little bit here. You were at the Ski World Cup in Lake Placid this weekend. When was the last time before that you were at a live sporting event?
Okay, this is a hard question because I have, as was previously mentioned, a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
And so it's been a little more infrequent for me. Actually, the last time I was at a live sporting event before this weekend, I think was a Vermont Green match last season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are you looking forward to it? You're back into live sports, I'm assuming. You had such an awesome weekend. Is there more stuff that's on your radar now?
I mean, first of all, hey, if the cross country World Cup wants to come back to this region, I'm there. But I hope to get to a basketball game for sure. Celtics game. I still have not been to a UVM game. I want to check out their games next season. And, live sports are amazing. And Vermont is, for a state with not a huge population, I think we're fortunate to have a lot of opportunities.
Yeah, it's pretty remarkable. I was at the Green game this past weekend with Burgess Brown, the brave little state producer. We were gutting it out. It was like in the teens. Yes. The wind chill was like 6 degrees. And it didn't matter, like, especially when that goal went in. I feel like it's live sports. It's similar to like a live concert where it's just like you are kind of experiencing something that you're used to, I guess, kind of like ingesting through TV or headphones or whatever. And I feel like it just changes the tenor of an event so much to be there live.
Yeah.
And it's so fun. And so I had wondered if it had been a while for you.
Yeah, it has. And my son is 2. And so now I'm entering this whole phase where I'm going to get to go to see games and matches with him and sort of experience them through his eyes. So I'm looking forward to that as well.
I'm speaking with Josh Crane, who is the producer of Vermont Public's Brave Little State. Josh, we got just a couple minutes here. I'm wondering if I can bring us back to the NBA, actually. I didn't get a chance on last week's show to talk about Miami Heat star Bam Adebayo scoring 83 points. You had slacked me the day after this, and you were like, why don't we just have the sports report today?
I mean, that was 83 points in a game, no matter who it is. Obviously Kobe dropped to 81 a while ago. And Bam, who is not known as a scorer, is not the person you'd expect to break that record, or not a record, but to score that many points in a game. Pretty wild.
Did you watch any of it?
I saw highlights.
Yeah.
And I mean, I heard all the people griping about the end of that game and all the intentional fouling to drag it out so that Bam would have a chance to score more. I think if you got a shot at 83, why not go for it? As much as I'm not a Miami Heat fan.
I think the other part of that too, and I think this is kind of some messaging that I've seen the Heat use as they have been trying to like get on the other side of this media discourse about the 83 points, is you could put a lot of guys every guy in that situation, 4 minutes left, having 70 points, right, and say, get 13 more.
Yeah.
And I think it sounds easy, but I think there are so many different ways that this could have played out where he did not get that record. And I watched the game from beginning to end. I think I'm one of the few people who has thoughts about it, who actually watched it, is my take. And the shenanigans were only really going on for like the last 4 or 5 minutes.
I know. I mean, hey, that's hats off to Bam. That's cool. And, the Heat have also been winning a lot. And
They have.
So we'll see how this season shakes out. But there's definitely a chance the Celtics and the Heat could face off maybe in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah. I had a buddy who went to the Heat game in Miami, the next one after that 83-point game, and they were selling Bam Adebayo number 83 jerseys, and they were $83, and he got one.
Could you imagine, though, just getting tickets? I mean, it was a random
I know.
March game, and that happens in front of your eyes. I mean, that must have been really wild.
I know. It's amazing. As someone who's been to like a few NBA games, I feel like at every game, no matter who is playing, you're guaranteed a moment. You know, you'll see something really cool pretty much at any basketball game, but especially at an NBA game. But yeah, to be able to see that happen, it's a twice in a forever thing, I guess. 83 points in an NBA game.
I just hope that's the peak of the Heat season, you know, and it's all downhill from there.
Yeah, hopefully, right? I'll jinx it. Josh, where can people find your work on Brave Little State?
Yeah, find Brave Little State wherever you get your podcasts, bravelittlestate.org. It's a good show, and hope I'm here back talking to you soon.
Yeah. That is Josh Crane. He's the producer of Brave Little State. Josh, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for tuning in to the Sports Report. If you missed any of today's show, you can find it on YouTube. You can also catch us on Vermont Public Radio on Monday nights at 8. We're also available wherever you get your podcasts. Find out more about the show and how to get in touch with us at vermontpublic.org/sports. The Sports Report is a production of Vermont Public. It is produced by me. The technical director is Mike Dunn, with Kyle Ambusk on graphics and video production assistance from Dave Rice, Brian Stevenson, and Joey Palumbo. Our audio engineer is Peter Engish. I'm Nathaniel Wilson, your substitute host for this program that is all about the world of sports in Vermont and beyond. And real quick, before we get out of here, I had one message in the chat. It was from DK Rules 111, who says, "Allez Vermont, allez." And with that, we're out of here.